Okay, our product validation is going to be basically the instructions for how to assemble a particular system. You'll remember we have a product system and it has this different system information and properties, and then it can have one or more validations. So one of the important features of the validation, it gives us the ability to organize the test report. It's a good practice to refer to the test report when you configure these systems. Make sure you have all the parts in the correct place and so on and so forth. You'll notice that we have glass types labeled A, B, C for 9/16 glass, and then A1, B1 for the insulating impact resistant glass. Our product validation only includes the insulating impact resistant glass because the system is only intended to have that type of glass. Your product systems are intended to have one particular type of glass. And we don't want to create a situation where somehow we accidentally included 9/16 and engine 5/16, so we have a partially insulated storefront. Not what we want. The maximum pressures, dimensions of the system, these follow from the test report. And finally, we have a compatible door frame. Now, a validation can have one type of door frame. That door frame could have many different types of door leaps. Um, the uh, the other probably most important feature of the validations are the components. Validations give us the ability to organize the different component parts, different components that are used to actually build a complete system. So it's a good practice to use the same labels for the names of the components that were used on the actual test report. So that's why we have A1, B1, C1, and the same here. Now, in the elevation drawing, if we select a type of glass, okay, we have the component options, which are defined in our validation. Okay, so any three of these options are available as light options. Now, you'll notice consistently that when the drawing is first created, the C1 glass component is going to be selected. If we look at the component and edit it, there's a setting on the component default or not default. Those default components will be rendered in the drawings initially. Go back to the system and then the validation. Now we also have a head component. So here we select the head component. You'll notice there's only one type of head component defined. Same is true of the intermediate horizontal. And then we have a variety of different jam components. So if we have a look at the jam component, we have a variety. Okay, all of the components that are available to the system are available because they're defined in the context of the validation. Now, special note about the elevation component and the vertical section column component. Those are available to be selected through the Select Components link. This system only has one type of each, but you might find it's a good practice to include various vertical section component options that might relate to the time required to distribute the material, perhaps to upper floors of a building, um, or perhaps that reflects different installation methods that are not otherwise organized by having independent systems. Um, we can edit the configuration of the system. That includes the name, uh, the basis of approval for the test report, or if there isn't a test report and we're configuring something just for our own use, I like to designate that as user. We can include a link to the test report. So this link, you have seen where it's used a couple of times within BidUnity. The expiration date of the system is we ought to date this out a bit further, about 2025. Well, we'll worry about that later. Approval restriction. This is a reference to the Florida Building Code, where we have a special high velocity hurricane zone, and not all systems are approved for that, so there can be a restriction. Also, the document reference number. This is a reference to the Florida Building Code website, where this would be the product approval ID number as determined by the state. Our maximum pressures, height, and width. This is equivalent to about 1,000 feet. Most elevations are not going to be that wide. Although the test report doesn't include a limitation on the width, I use a big number because BidUnity requires that. And then finally, we can select an association between the validation, the framing of the validation, and the available types of door frames that have been configured for the supplier of the system. I guess it's important to note that the door frames that are available here are configured for the same vendor of the system. So if the vendor of our system is Trulight, then we only have the option to associate Trulight door frames with the system. We'll take another look at the components in another video on the components page. We also can copy these validations. I like to append my company name or abbreviation and then make a note as to what the copy is for. So let's say fabricated only, right? And then I can go back and I can delete the field labor if I chose to do that, so on.